Welcome to video 2.2. Again, we're talking about conversions. The difference between now is that I don't have a table and I'm not counting jumps, but I'm doing something, I'm using proportions. So before we get into it, I'm just going to remind ourselves about how many places we've used proportions already in this course. So here is an example of a proportion. There's no units or anything. We're going to solve for x. So well, I guess there's two ways we can do this. One is kind of like the shortcut method, where we see a pattern and we say, oh, okay, so here, if I go from here to here, I could say that, I get a times 2. 4 times 2 is 8. So I could ask myself, what times 2 is going to give me 12? So I could say, well, I think it's 6. So I could just right away and say x is equal to 6. That's a little bit nicer. Um, so But what about if I wanted to use the cross multiplying? Cross multiply. Then I would look at these two. I'll just erase this for a second. I could say, well, I need to multiply these two together. So x times 8, so that'd be the same thing as 8x, would be equal to the other two multiplied together, 12 times 4. 12 times 4. 12 times 4 is 48. So I'd say 8x equals 48. Now I want to get x by itself. It's being multiplied by 8, so I need to divide both sides by 8. So that this 8 over 8 business just becomes 1x. So it's the same thing as saying x is equal to, what's 48 divided by 8? It's 6. So clearly the cross-multiplying method is a lot harder. So if you can find the pattern and just say, hey, what times 2 is equal to 12, that's a lot easier. But the thing is, the cross-multiplying works even for hard numbers. So here's the second one. What's the unit price? In this case, it's for Gala apples. So if I had a bag, a 5-kilogram bag that costs $2.50, what's the cost per kilogram? So in this case, again, maybe I could find a pattern. Seems to me that if I go from 5 to 2.5 here, I'm just dividing by 2. So, what's half of 1? So like I said, it'd be 0.5. So if I said 0.5, and it's money, so I would write like that. That would work great. Or if I could do the cross-multiplying method, here I'll do my cross-multiplying, and I could say, okay, so it's it's these two multiplied by these two. I just have a question mark, but really that's the same thing. I was just saying, what's x? So here I'll say 5 times x, so that's 5x, is equal to, I think I like that green better, 5x is equal to 2.5 times 1. Well, 2.5 times 1 is just the same thing as 2.5, so I'll just leave it as 2.5. And now to get x by itself, I have to divide both sides by 5. So x is going to be equal to, well, what's 2.5 divided by 5? If you do it in your calculator, you get 0.5. At the end, you say, hey, this is money, so I'm going to have to put it in the proper form. Do it to the nearest cent. Maybe even put a box around it so the teacher sees it. How about this one? Kyle scored 3 out of the team's 5 goals. What percentage of the goals did he score? So again, I want to figure out what's in here, so I'm going to put an x there. So percentage is really like out of 100. So whenever you see percentage, you can think of it, this is the way to solve percent, is how much out of 100. So this is how it turns into a percentage. So again, I can go and say 3 times 100 and 5 times x. So I'll do my cross multiplying. I'll set that up. I'll say 5 times x is 5x is equal to 3 times 100, which is 300. So, so x is going to be equal to 300 divided by 5, and I think the answer for that one is 60. And again, I have to say, hey, this is a percentage, just like the last one was money, so I had to put a dollar sign and all that. This is a percentage, so I'm going to say 60% is my answer. Okay. If 1 euro is $1.64, how many euros can I buy for $100? We did some things like this. So again, I'll do my cross multiplying. I'll do my 1.64 times x is going to be equal to 1 times 100, which is 100. So if I divide both sides by 1.64, this is definitely a time to get the calculator out. When I divide it out, what do I get? I get 60.98. And then I think, okay, is it dollars? Is it percent? What is it? So actually, when I look back up here, no, it's euros. So I'll say euros. That's how many euros I can buy for $100. Sounds about right. Okay, so let's go back to proportions and now think about for converting measurements. It says here, if 1 centimeter is equal to 10 millimeters. Okay, so that's the part that we're given. Convert 3.4 centimeters to millimeters. Now the thing to watch for is to make sure that the top of your fraction is using the same kind of units. They're both using centimeters, and in this case the bottom is both using millimeters. That's the important part to set up. It doesn't matter if you put centimeters on the top or on the bottom, it's just about being consistent. So now we can see where this information got set up over here, and this information got set up over here. So now we're ready to do our cross multiplying. Well, 1 times x is just x, and 10 times 3.4 is equal to 34. Last, let's go check out the units. It's 34 what? It's 34 centimeters. I'll make my 4 look better. 34 centimeters. How do I know it's centimeters? Oh, wait, no, I'm completely wrong. It's down here. There's my x. It's 34 millimeters. Okay, let's change that. 34 millimeters. And there's my answer. Okay, so it's very similar to what we've done before. Here's a really fancy question here. It's going to be in 2 steps. If 12 inches is equal to 1 foot and 3 feet is equal to 1 yard, how many inches in 110 yards? Wow, so that's like a Canadian football field. So if I go here's this huge thing and it's 110 yards. And inches are tiny, right? Inches are just so, my answer should be pretty big. It should take a lot of inches to be 110 yards. So we're going to do this in 2 steps. We're going to do the first one is we're going to go, first of all, we're starting with yards. So we're going to go from yards into feet. That's my first plan. Okay, so which is the one here that has to do with the relationship between yards and feet? It looks like this one here. That sounds good. And then we've got this information here. So that's all the stuff that we're going to use. So I'm going to say 3 feet is equal to 1 yard. So I'll go maybe like 3 feet. I'll just go like that for feet. 1 yard is going to be equal to, now I've got the number of yards, but I need to figure out the number of feet. So that's why I'm going to put the x up there, and I'll put 110 yards. And again, it doesn't matter too much how you set it up, what's on the top and what's on the bottom. The fact is that we got to be consistent. So I got feet on the top and I got yards on the bottom. Now I'm going to do my cross multiplying. So 1 times x is just x. And then 3 times 110 is going to be 330. And 330 what? Well, x belongs with feet. So I'm going to say 330 feet. Okay, so that's the first step. I'm going to switch now, and now I'm going to go, I'm not done because I want to get how many inches. So my next part is I'm going to go from feet to inches. So what's the thing that relates feet and inches? It looks like it's this one, isn't it? It's 12 inches and 1 foot. So I'm going to say, okay, 12 inches so is the same as a foot, so I'll set that up as my first part of my proportion. And now, what do I want to figure out? I know the number of feet, so that'd be down here, 330 feet. But I have to figure out the number of inches, so I'll say x inches up there. Okay, so time to do the cross multiplying. 1 times x is going to be x. That's this way. The other way is 12 times 330. 12 times 330, I think I got to get my calculator out for that. I would get 3,960. What are my units? X is up here, they're inches, so I'm going to say 3,960 inches. Does that sound reasonable? Yeah, I think that's a pretty good number because I remember inches are very small and I needed to do 110 yards, so that's quite a bit. Okay, so if you take a look at the next side, it says worksheet, do all. So I give you these tables here, and my first instruction is to copy these tables into your study guide. So later on when you're doing mastery checks or quizzes or tests or whatever I might ask you to do, you can always bring your study guide into it, and then you can you've got these ones. So you can use these to solve proportions. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like you to do all these questions because there's not that many. Each time you do a question, use this. You can either type this into your browser or you can use your QR code reader and you can get an answer key and you can find all the answers. And then when you're all done, ask me for the mastery check. Thank you, and I will see you later.